Hi, Michel.
Oh, hi.
Are you ready for dealing with another key concept of your theory? This time it is archaeology.
Ah, that one. Yeah, okay. But it is almost the same as with discourse. My use of the term discourse was often misunderstood. The same problem, unfortunately, occurred with archaeology.
Actually, I thought it was rather easy and straightforward. Originally, archaeology means something like the study of human history and prehistory, in particular, the study of human activity through the excavation and analysis of material culture. At least in my eyes, archaeology has to do with the digging out of all human things, or with excavating these things, laying them bare, like in Pompeii or Troy. And since you did a lot of historical work, I always thought you would use the term archaeology in order to describe your own work with historical sources as a kind of digging out or excavating stuff.
This precisely is the misunderstanding. Actually, I have nothing to do with archaeology in this sense. In fact, I don't like the metaphor of digging out. I'm more the surface guy. But I also did not expect that almost all of my readership was lacking any sense of humor.
What do you mean?
Well, how about thinking archaeology from its verso? Ever heard of anarchy?
Sure, means something like lawlessness or misrule.
Exactly. And now you go back to archaeology. This then would be standing for the science of regularity and order. And if you then combine this with discourse, you almost got it. Archaeology turns out to be nothing else than describing all the rules which, at a given period and for a specific society, define the limits and the forms of expressibility. What is it possible to speak of?
Sounds familiar.
Archaeology, as I understand it, investigates the regularities or the implicit rules of discursive practices at a specific time or in a given culture. Archaeology defines the rules of formation of a group of statements, which precisely means of a discourse.
Can you give an example?
Sure, but they're always the same. The rules that determine the discourse about madness, the rules that determine the discourse about illness, about guilt, sexuality, and so on and so forth.
I see, but in order to find these rules or regularities, you did often go into the archives. Actually, you were somebody who did excavate things. The case of Herculine Barbin, for example, or the case of Pierre Rivière, or the Lettres de Cachet.
Oh no, not again. I'm so fed up with this imagery of digging out, going into the depths, or entering the underground. To my mind, all things, at least discursive things, are basically flat, literally superficial. And this is also why the rules of a given discourse are not secrets that can be excavated on site by means of a spar or something, or can be discovered and unveiled in an archive like some unpublished letter. The rules are not lying under or behind the discourse. They simply coexist with it. They are in the way a given terminology is handled, how the words are used.
Wittgenstein.
What?
Sounds like Wittgenstein, pretty much so.
What do you mean?
That any given language, or rather speech, is determined by the way we are using words. This is something Wittgenstein writes about in his Philosophical Investigations, a book that was translated into French by your friend Pierre Klossowski in 1961.
It's possible that there are some resonances.
And it was Wittgenstein who came up with the notion that philosophy should be a kind of toolbox, addressing users rather than readers. You promoted very similar ideas.
Okay, I got it. What's next? Will you be drawing a parallel between Wittgenstein's language games and my games of truth? Is that where you're heading? I think you're pretty much stuck with the idea of digging out. Right now you are excavating Wittgenstein in a rather desperate attempt to understand what I mean by archaeology. Well then, go ahead. Why don't you come up with Abel Rey, who as early as 1930 described the history of science as an, and I quote, archaeology of scientific ideas.
Abel Rey? Never heard of him.
Abel Rey was the first director of the Sorbonne Institute for History of Science and Technology, that in later time would be headed by Bachelard and then Canguilhem.
In other words, Rey has contributed to defining the discourse that you also adapted and developed? He was subjected to the same forms of expressibility as you?
Well, gradually you seem to be leaving the imagery of excavation.
But only because a puppet helped me digging out stuff. Thank you very much, Michel.
You're welcome.